And I should be live. Oh, I gotta change my audio on this thing. Yeah, I just kept pushing this back. I just got a couple things I want to do. I know I'm supposed to have an episode out, and I don't because I'm sick, and I'm pretty sick, and I am not. I just don't want to. Oh crap! I thought there were people here, but there's not. That's all right. It's the way she goes. It's usually like that. And I don't even know if anyone is on Twitter. There usually isn't. And I'm tired. I'm just going to use this to record a number of things. Okay. Hello. I'm sorry. Please give me a couple minutes. Moving slow today. I need some water. Oh, my bad. All right. So I'm going to do a couple of things today. One of them being I'm just going to record my sorry. I'm going to record a little housekeeping thing that I'm going to put out on the podcast since I haven't released an episode, in a few days. But I'm about to smoke some weed, and I'm going to talk about Okay, so housekeeping stuff. I'm pretty sick, which has delayed the episode. I don't want to release it on like brain fog. I hope you guys that are new to the podcast will bear. Cleveland. All right, we're going to start the housekeeping here. Um, okay, so housekeeping stuff. I am going to release the new episode. I have written some stuff down for it. It's going to be less scripted, so it's going to be different than my normal podcast episodes, and that is Cleveland. Oh man, no energy. Um, Crap. So I just wanted to release this to touch base because I'm probably not going to release anything for a couple days here. I'm just sick, so I've been doing some other content. I don't want to release a full podcast episode when I'm not feeling well. I'm just going to be slower and everything. So I'm going to release a new episode soon. I've got a couple episodes written, but I just need to wait until I'm at full capacity to do it, or else it's going to be a subpar product. But I've gotten a lot more listeners recently, and I really appreciate that. So I'm just going to take this to, if you care, talk about a couple things with the podcast going on. So the next episode is going to be a little bit less scripted than the other ones. I know I said that before, but that is because I want to make a little bit more teaching content on the YouTube, a little bit more direct, and that is with me creating a lot of stuff on YouTube right now. So I have been putting out stuff. It's a little bit lower effort, and by lower effort, I just mean that I'm kind of trying to just try it out to learn it. So please don't think it's going to be the highest quality yet, but I'm learning, and there's things that I'm going to implement. So if you want more content, there's a lot on the YouTube that isn't on the podcast. But the podcast will continue. I've got a great guest for Thursday. It's Lone Pine Farm or something like that. Screwed up his name, but he's cool. He's got a farm, which is awesome. So check out the YouTube. 5 till midnight will be live. Not 5 till midnight. Illegitimate Scholar live will be live Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. 8 p.m. Eastern. So that will be, yeah, that'll be cool. What was I saying? Geez, I'm not going to Cleveland this one. Yeah, 8 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. Yeah, this is why I'm not recording the new episode. I'm just not capable of it. Okay, please, if you're not in the Discord, come check out the Discord. Patreon as well. The Patreon's up. I got a couple spots for $2. You can basically just kind of request what content you want, because at this point I'm trying out so much different stuff that it's probably will be worth a shot for me, unless it doesn't fit in the niche exactly. And yeah, please give me feedback. I appreciate it. I know lots of new people are coming over, and if there's something you don't like about the podcast, I would really appreciate you sharing that with me, because it would help me improve. Yeah, new episode. Yeah, 5 till midnight. We're doing that every Monday at 8 p.m. It's different than this, but it's a lot of fun with Adam Nutter and Luke and Typo from Biting the Bullet and Kyle Matochik. We're working on that as well. I took on a lot of projects. And I mean, the last thing is, I was recording for like 2 weeks a Jimmy Buffett documentary. And I don't know how to make a documentary, and I was straightforward with that with the people that we were recording with. And from what we've been told, we made a good impression. So I'm going to be at Meeting of the Minds at the end of the month, recording for that again. If that's interesting to anybody, it's it's the culture of Jimmy Buffett fans and surrounding him. So that's going to be Meeting of the Minds in Gulf Shores. I'll be there. If anyone happens to be going there, let me know. But yeah, that's another thing that I'm getting into. I'm learning a lot of different things at once. I think I'm in a period of consolidation right now, and I was in one for a while before, and now I'm in it again, and I gotta systematize and do some stuff. And me and Higgy, I don't know how much I've talked about it, but we're gonna start Prosperous Parrots, the other thing, talking about entrepreneurship and whatnot. Gosh, I'm tired. All right, so that's what's going on. Please don't not listen to the podcast and everything, because I haven't released an episode in a little bit. I think I need to make them a little bit more casual, but I still want to make it so that people like the content. The podcast is still the main priority, although the YouTube is, it's the same content. It's just released in a different way. But we'll see. Definitely going to continue both regardless. Oh, what's up? Okay. So that's good. I just finished recording a housekeeping thing for the podcast. So now, Cleveland, I gotta Cleveland that. Okay. I'm about to talk about some articles. This article, I gotta share it. Okay. Second. Oh, hell yeah, dude. I love Minions. I don't know. I've talked about that a little bit. So there's another one. Where's he at? Oh, yeah, Kevin's up here. I really unironically love these dudes. Yeah. Love Minions. That one's I like plushies in general. Freaking whatever that dude is, Matsume or something, or Guantame. I don't know. He's an egg. But okay, let's talk about culturally. No, not that one first. We're gonna talk about this article. Kevin. Dude, yeah, Kevin. I'm gonna do some stuff on the Minions pretty soon here. I got this idea that like the don't steal my idea. I'm just kidding. If you want to, it's fine. I got to record it here. But the idea is that the Minions are like representatives of kind of like almost Moloch, right? Like they're the representatives of like pure evil, and they're like a metaphor for like for Moloch, or like the power of mankind, or like the freaking divine right of kings, because they're like, dude, they're immortal, right? And they're obsessed with bananas. Like they're obsessed with bananas, which is like, the Banana Republic shit is real. And there's this book, Banana by Dan Kopel, that somebody that listens to the podcast, shout out Luke Linné, that he shared with me. And I read it, and like the banana is a very, very important. It's an important fruit, man. And they're immortal. And yet purple minions turn them all crazy. That was the thing that happened, and their energy was kind of harvested in a certain way. It was harnessed for evil, which it can be. And even when they were doing stuff for Gru, like he's still a super villain. I know they like they make it whatever, but I mean Napoleon, that guy was with Napoleon. That was the most recent one where they were like, well, this isn't far enough back that it doesn't matter. But regardless, I'm gonna be doing that. Freaking minions, dude. They're the embodiment of evil. Okay. I forgot how to do this. All righty. Let's see. Here's okay. So look. So I wanted to talk about this article because this guy is the federal secretary of education, which is, I will go on record saying that I think should be abolished. But this guy, like, I literally went to the University of Connecticut, where I got a teaching degree, an education bachelor's degree, and I quit my master's degree. But I went to the university that this guy, I think he either worked there as a PhD, he's affiliated with the university in some way, and then he was the Secretary of Education of Connecticut. So I think it's important for people to understand what he is, what he represents, what his ideas are, and how that's being implemented in the schools across the country. So Biden Education Secretary encouraged teacher support for woke curriculum report. And this is the New York Post. And this is from a few years ago. It's from a few years ago, April 27th, 2021. So this guy, Miguel Cardona, he oversaw the creation of the critical race theory courses. So he was in Connecticut. He did a lot of the same stuff. That's also my state. He wanted to, in his previous role as Connecticut Schools Commissioner, U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona wanted to ensure his team was involved and made sure teachers supported the new woke curriculum. I don't know whose quote that is, him or them, but studied Cleveland. So he studied Black and Latino studies for her master's program. This is the teacher of the year. So this is the teacher of the year that I think he made the teacher of the year. That she studied Black and Latino studies for her master's program, has created programming incorporating social justice for race and gender inequalities. Her application included more references to the importance of Black leaders in history than anything I've read before. I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing. She volunteered teaching in Ghana and Ecuador, and that, well, that's fantastic, honestly. Understands curriculum reduces invisibility for students of color and creates global preparedness for all students. I don't want to say that I think that's a bad thing. I think it's totally okay for that in theory, right? Like for in theory, people to be studying their culture, but I think in practice, the way I see it is that it's taught in a certain way. It's taught with critical race theory as the backbone, which, I will define a little bit later in this, but I think most people know what it is. And I think the problem I have is that it compartmentalizes people into different identities. We're going to get back to that in a second, but one of the comments, American history should only be taught by Native Americans. Absolutely. That's what should happen. We should just get the Native Americans to do it. Yeah, the Navajo reservation is very poor. We'll just give them jobs teaching. I'm honestly sure that the Navajo, if we just employed all the Navajo as teachers, like as they were, they would do better than a lot of the people that are in schools right now. But yeah, like I always say, always got to bring up contemporary Native American issues. The Navajo and many reservations of Native Americans deal with a lot of shit. And part of it was because of the history, and this is an aside. So Cleveland, like if you research what went on with the Native American residential schools, it's like it shows like a lot of what they're doing today, like pushing a foreign standard onto somebody. And today it's like in schools, it's like a liberal standard onto conservative kids. And people should have a right to get away from that, like school choice now for everybody. Okay. We need teachers behind this wave of our curriculum becoming more woke, he continued. Okay. Megan Hatch. I don't know if that's what he said. Okay. So critical race theory dictates that race is an underlying dynamic of all human interaction and views the human experience as a constant power struggle between the races, often with a focus on white privilege. And, unlike a lot of other people perceived as right wing, I definitely think that white privilege is a thing, but it's like black privilege is also a thing. Female privilege is a thing, just like male privilege is. And I think that people have different benefits to what their identity is, how other people perceive them. But it really depends on like what your specific values are and what you're trying to go for. So, for example, if you're like a white guy in like the Atlanta prison system where it's full of black people, including the guards, it's probably not the best thing to be white in that situation. If you're a white guy today and you're just a normal average white dude, it's probably better to be that than a lot of than like a black person in the inner city. But what if you're like a black person who grew up in a white area and you have the privileges of that, and then you also get the privileges of, and this is factually correct, that you need less of SAT scores, you need to reach less to reach lower standards to get put in to elite colleges. So you have some advantages. So it's like there are pros and cons, and I think we should be fair and not just like, yes, white privilege exists, okay, but like people act like white privilege is the end all be all, that's the only important thing, and that's applying a social construct to something that's absolute. And I just, I don't think we should ever do that in any of these cases. Yeah. So race is an underlying dynamic of all human interaction and views the human experience as a constant power struggle between the races, often with a focus on white privilege. So like, I think the issue here is that it wants you to focus specifically on that factor of race. And you can't talk about class. You can't talk about colorism, of the fact that taller people make more money than shorter people, of like all these other things, of like the designation of Hispanic tends to benefit whiter Hispanics, which were really like a lot of the people who were actually doing colonialism, because you could be a white guy in America that's like Irish and your family did not participate in colonialism, like your background didn't, and then you get lumped in with people that did, even though it shouldn't matter because it's your ancestors. But I get it, historical wrongs, whatever, people care about that. um but it's deciding that that's the one factor, that the other factors aren't as important. I mean, that is a man-made idea, and we shouldn't be giving, like, we shouldn't be having that as underlying curriculum in anything. It shouldn't be underlying. We shouldn't have something that is not an immutable truth being the underlying truth in what we're teaching children. You shouldn't have a mutable truth like that. Okay. So, along with Democratic Governor Ned Lamont, Cardona steered Connecticut to become the first state in the nation to require all high schools to offer courses on African American, Black, Puerto Rican, and Latino studies. So, all high schools to offer these courses. What about Asian studies? What about Irish studies? Like, I'm into my Irish freaking descent, background, whatever. Like, I want that. Why can't we all get that? I'm not kidding. I want it. But they want to, but specifically, if they're looking at these, number one, why are you saying Puerto Rican? Like, why is Puerto Rican? It's just in Latino. Is it because Cardona is Puerto Rican and he wanted to emphasize Puerto Rican above Latino by actually having it in there? I mean, I assume that's what it is, which is like, like, this gets down to the point that I'm talking about. Like, when you talk about it like this, when you specify certain races and you specify certain reasons, certain like characteristics, socially constructed characteristics like race, in what you're making as your immutable truth, the underlying dynamic of all human interaction is the verbiage used here, then you're by definition, you're prioritizing something created by man. And I know people think that's fine, but like, that is something that's not going to stand the test of time. And that's what these sort of things should be doing. They shouldn't be just Cleveland. They shouldn't be just like made for like what's big at the time. That's why our culture just goes over and over again in like cycles of like of anger and violence. It's like everything is way too out of whack, man. Everything is too like it's too based on the current situation, and things change too quickly. But I digress. Curriculum states the goal is to analyze how race, power, and privilege influence group access to citizenship, civil rights, and economic power. And like, look, that sounds fine to me, but I bet the implementation is way off because I've seen it. This curriculum acknowledges that by connecting the story of people of color in the U.S. to the larger story of American history, connecting the story of people of color in the U.S. to the larger story of American history, the fact is that more inclusive, culturally relevant content in classrooms leads to greater student engagement and better outcomes for all. I mean, I don't know how they're measuring that. I'm not going to look into the specifics of it right now. Just last week, it emerged that a new rule proposed by Cardona's U.S. Education Department says financial grants could encourage schools to incorporate teaching and learning practices that reflect the diversity, identities, histories, and contributions and experiences of all students. The plan, posted on the National Archives Federal Register website, cites as examples the New York Times Magazine's controversial 1619 Project and the work of Ibram X. Kendi, author of the best-selling book How to Be an Anti-Racist, which I've talked about at other points. It also says that racially, ethnically, culturally, and linguistically responsive teaching and learning practices contribute to what has been called an identity-safe learning environment, where teachers strive to assure students that their social identities are an asset rather than a barrier to success. I mean, like, it's the problem I have with this, and we're going to talk about culturally relevant pedagogy. One of the things that they were talking about briefly, the problem that I have is that it promotes division. It promotes division in the sense that it promotes these identities that are different than the American identity. And I don't think full assimilation is necessarily the path. I think there's a middle ground here, but I've seen it in practice, and I can't, like, going into more specifics would just take so long to explain, and I might do that in the future. But when you promote specific identities within one country, when you promote these smaller identities that are a subdivision, inherently these identities are going to be tied to different beliefs, and inherently some of those beliefs are going to be at odds with beliefs of other people in the country. And I just, it's rough to sell that as a country. Like, that just seems inherently disruptive to me. And I guess that's like promoting not having a diverse society, but like, I think that we should just be careful about what diversity we have and be honest about it. Because when you have diversity that ends up with what I've seen recently, which is like, and I'm going to go into another article in a second, but sometimes these conflicts of identity can fester into like people within one country actually hating and wanting to kill another group in that country, and that's just not good for anybody. Like, and obviously I'm referring right now to what's going on with Israel and Palestine, and the protests that I've seen from Palestinians and from Israelis and their supporters, the people that are in their camp, talking about it, like, in the streets, and both of them are just like, I've seen both groups talking like basically genocide on the other group, and like, I don't like that. Sucks, man. That sucks. Like, regardless of the whole situation, I mean, that's a bad thing. um and it's weird that that's like in the country. Like how somebody should have known that, like, having these types of different diversities, this specific diversity between these groups of people, who then the government curriculum is then promoting these identities, and they're not assimilating people to have similar ways of living. So you start to live in a low trust society where people don't have similar ways of living because they've been compartmentalized and they've been told to concentrate on other subdivisions other than the country. So at what point do you just stop having a country, when you stop having a people that identify with that country and with that identity? And when people have a different idea about what that identity means, that's when you have diffusion and everything. But I mean, this is such an extreme case, and it shows having, like, having so many differences between people, having like these massive differences where like people are literally calling for genocide on the other group, and they're in the same country, they're citizens of the same country. That should be crazy. It is crazy. It's like, you should know that that shouldn't be a good idea. And I'm not, look, this is not a call to action or anything. This is not a call for deportation. It's not a call for change of citizenship rules. It's just talking about it. It's none of that, but it really isn't. I would never call that. Okay, comments. Past hurts, get over it. Human identity, don't get too diverse. Trumpites and most anything else. Stop country's identity, have world identity. Yeah, I guess I just have a problem with who might be able to craft that world identity. Um, okay. I'm gonna share. I got one more, Cleveland. But I think that people should concentrate more on their identity, like, as broadly being humans. Because I think it would prevent a lot of violence between groups. And I don't know. It's hard. Earth is one boat. Yep, Turtle Island. That's where we're living. I'm literally gonna share. I'm gonna share my. I'm gonna share my email. And I've redacted certain information off this, but I'm literally just gonna share this from my email. So this was sent from my friend to me, a Jewish friend of mine, and he got this from Cleveland. Forgot about that. He got this from his school's student government, so his college's student government. So this is Central Connecticut State University. And this was sent to all students in the university. And this isn't a call to action to go bother them. Please don't. I'm just using this as an example. There's plenty of this everywhere, so don't pick on these little adorable little naive kids. But so it's subject call to action, which is already, I guess the call to action is just going to the protest. But rise and shine, Blue Devils. It's a beautiful day to exercise your right to protest at the Connecticut state capitol. I'm sure you heard about what's going on in Palestine, but sometimes what we hear is not always true. The violation of human rights is not just an international issue, it affects the United States on a global scale. So you should absolutely care about it. Number one, this is just it's written it sounds childish like the way it's written, and it also is like, to me, I mean, this is my perception of it. um it like, you should absolutely care about it. It's such a immediately the tone to me is such like a holier than thou thing. I don't like it. And before I go any further, I should say I'm not specifically picking on people that support Palestine or Israel at all. This particular example is from people that support Palestine, but I've seen this on both sides. I've seen people say some absolutely atrocious things. This is just an example that I got from a friend, and I have reasons where I understand Israel's position and Palestine's position, and I do have, I mean, I do. So Cleveland, but I grew up. I spent 2 years of my life in a Muslim country, so I have an affinity for Muslims. I have Muslim friends. I have Palestinian friends. I have closer Jewish friends. Like I have a friend, a new friend, but he's in Israeli and he is in Israel. And then I have another friend of mine who's been on the podcast who is Jewish, and he's a really close friend of mine. So I have more ties to Israel, although I generally do feel that in the broad scheme of things, over the past 100 years, Palestine has got the raw deal. I do think that primarily all or most Palestinian and most Israeli citizens are just generally victims in this in a greater scheme. So all that is a long way to say that it's. I'll read Craig's comment first. People do not assimilate in. In England, they have no-go zones the police won't enter. Areas in the UK run by Sharia law. This is not how to make a cohesive country. Yeah, I agree with you, Craig. It's unfortunate. And it shouldn't be considered racist to say so. Like, this is not good for anybody. Especially because a lot of the migrants are coming from places that have just been destabilized by Western foreign policy. Or Russian foreign policy. I'm not gonna they probably do less because they have less capability, but there's a lot of people screwing around everywhere. So, but this was sent out. So I had that whole disclaimer. I'll decide what I'm going to leave in when I split these up. But it's a beautiful day. Like all this, you should absolutely care about Palestine and Israel 101. Israel's ethnic cleansing of Palestinians is a prime example of colonialism. Israel has frequently attacked Palestinians for the past 75 years. The source of violence in Israel and Palestine is the long history of violence and oppression against Palestinians. Source IMEU. I don't even know what that is, but the fact that they provide a source for somebody who is just stating their opinion, like that's not a fact. It's not research or anything. I don't necessarily have a problem with these specific points, but I do have a problem with this being sent by a university in general, but by a public university. And this is the type of thing where, like, if we're going to live in a multi-ethnic state, if we're going to live in a multi-ethnic country, you can't, like, even if this was all in the other direction, I would be just as pissed. I would be just as unhappy with it, because it's like, that there are students at this university who don't feel that way. And you're promoting these socially constructed ideas as facts. And again, like, I kind of agree with them, but this is just not the appropriate place to put it out. And it's an increasing division in our country where somebody thought that this was an acceptable thing to put out. Like, this wasn't going to make certain students feel unsafe. Of course, they believe it's justified because they have a almost religious fanaticism towards their ideas that they have of human rights. I'm sure that these people fully believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that Palestine is correct, and Israel is wrong. And I don't think that you should ever have that type of certainty to anything that's man-made, any sort of man-made idea. And whenever you you create criteria. Whenever you decide criteria for whether something is good or bad, you're inherently promoting a socially constructed idea because it goes through your human brain. So it shows like it's what is lost my train of thought. Okay, but all out for Palestine. I guess this protest happened today. I might have went and recorded it if I wasn't feeling sick. And then another thing, like you guys know, I've talked about it. I'm a fan of Malcolm X. I like his writing. I get it. I don't agree with most of it, but like I like his perspective. I don't think he was a bad person. I think he wanted what was best for what he saw as his people, and he was honest about it. And I do like him, but I don't think it's appropriate to be used in a school newsletter like this. I don't think you should do that. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people being oppressed and those doing the oppressing. Um, yeah, and then there's an image of Palestine being destroyed. So I blocked out their number. Obviously, you can go find them, but I don't think any of my fans would. Fans, sorry, not fans. I meant to say listeners. I apologize. That was a slip up. Yeah, all 12 people that listen to my podcast. Um, I don't think that you guys would go out of your way to screw with people especially because these are just dumb kids in the student government. Um, okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing there. Cleveland. So I don't know who heard this before, but I put out like I did like 5 minutes at the beginning on literally just housekeeping. And I'm going to be putting that out on the podcast feed. I haven't put out an episode yet because I've been sick and I just haven't felt up to it. I don't want to put out a subpar product, but I've been putting out a few things on the YouTube, different things. Still kind of just learning the process. And that's I've just been trying to learn it. So the quality might not be the best, but let me know what you like and what you don't like. I would appreciate that. The next podcast episode that I actually do release is going to be a little bit less scripted. I think I wrote a script, but I wrote it on a piece of paper instead. And now I got some videos that I could react to that I wanted to watch to make a little bit more reaction content while I'm not feeling great, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. So if there's anything that you guys want me to watch, and I know reaction content kind of gets a bad rap, but people tend to like it and it's easy to do. And I watch a lot of these videos. So I really like, I always have thoughts on them that I'd like to share. And there's people that have been watching them. So, um, I think I will. I think I'll be making reaction content, but I'd like to make what people want, and I don't want people to think that like I'm making reaction content because I'm trying to be cheap and sell out. But it's fun to do. So if there's anything you guys want me to look at, please let me know in the comments. I appreciate it. Chinatown holds their culture, but welcomes outsiders in. Yeah, man. I mean, you guys know I love Chinese culture. I really do. I'm a fan of the Asians. I am. That's what happens when you live in Asia for a little bit. So, if no one has an opinion, I'll pick something. Gosh, I feel like I'm teaching again. If nobody raises their hands, I'm just going to pick somebody. As a glorified babysitter. Can you imagine me as a public high school teacher? Jeez, I can't believe I ever followed through on that, man. I don't trust any government. Nobody has any idea. That's all right. I'll wait. I'm looking for something. I think I put some stuff in a folder. Okay. So I'm going to start with another What If Alt Hist video, the anthropology of real life NPCs. And if I'm in the middle of this and there's a video that you guys want me to do instead, just share it and that's fine. I wish you were my teacher. Yeah, that'd be weird, Craig. I think that'd be weird. I just the age gap would be weird.
This video. I like to imagine that only at this specific moment in history, with someone.
Wait, Cleveland. This is the anthropology of real life NPCs. I'm gonna watch What If Alt Hiss videos. It makes it really easy to respond because he shares opinions, and I like him, but I don't agree with everything he says.
Of my social type, could you make a video at the anthropology and philosophy of real life NPCs? The digital world allows the blurring of lines between what's a shitpost and what's an actual statement. Hell, that's the entire internet historian's career. This is not a video about NPCs in video games or how they were created. This is not a video game channel, and I don't particularly care if some Japanese studio in the 90s invented them or not. This is a video about the NPCs we see in our daily lives. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. For the older folks listening, what is an NPC? NPC stands for non-player character. In video games where the hero goes on all these crazy adventures around the world, often killing monsters, dealing with insane plots, and more, the player runs into these scripted characters named NPCs. An example would be that there's an NPC that runs a local bar or a school teacher you need to question for your murder case. The joke with NPCs is that their limits are often very clearly seen by the game player. Since these characters aren't really expected to do that much, you'll often see them repeat the same lines over and over again, have a strained, limited vocabulary.
Dude, I mean, this guy is like, I love this dude, and I love the confidence in which he says this stuff, but it's like he says some spot on shit, and he puts it in a great way. And he's even younger than I am too. But like, yeah, the way he says stuff is like, it's like sometimes I'm just like, you freaking nerd, man. But like, he's cool.
And they're often caught doing weird or bizarre repetitive tasks that don't make much sense. Seeing an NPC is like seeing a glitch in the matrix.
I just love I know that he's going out in the real world and walking around and interacting with someone briefly, and he's like, well, this person's an NPC, and he's thinking that. And on the other side, the person is talking to him, and like, I'm not making fun of him when I say this, but they're like, wow, this guy's like autistic. Which is fine. Like, that's totally, like, that's fine. But like, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But like, calling other people NPCs is a pretty autistic action. I will say that. And I feel that. But like, I've been known to be a little bit tismed up myself. So, it's not an insult. I legitimately really like autistic people. I like the way their brains work. I like talking to them. Yeah.
Matrix, where the creators didn't put enough thought into these characters and predict how they would actually interact with the world. However, the next logical step from here was to compare these video game characters to people in the real world. For inhabitants of modern industrial societies, you run into lots of people who behave in scripted ways. When you deal with the barista at a coffee shop, bump into someone in the subway, or go to class, the interactions are in many ways scripted, since that's how social norms work. The NPC meme is now one of the most famous, and calling someone an NPC has become ubiquitous among people in my age group. Partially by challenge, I'm going to make an argument here that nested inside the NPC is actually a profound symbolism about the failing of modern society. You may chuckle, but wait till the end of the video and you'll see. Let's get started.
Hey, Cleveland, I missed that.
Now one of the most famous, and calling someone an NPC has become ubiquitous among people in my age group. Partially by challenge, I'm going to make an argument here that nested inside the NPC is actually a profound symbolism about the failing of modern society. You may chuckle, but wait till the end of the video and you'll see. Let's get started.
NPCs, hell yeah, brother. All right.
Rule growing up that I could only play strategy games until I was age 16. And after that, I was too busy to get super involved. I've sunk more hours than I can count into Total War, Company of Heroes, or StarCraft, but I never really got into the kind of games that use NPCs. I've played a decent amount of Skyrim and Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Me too, brother.
To be clear, I am colonizing the gamer space as a history buff, but I feel absolutely no remorse at that. I'm also not a memeologist. To be fair, that's not a real thing, and anyone over the age of 15 who claims to be that is a disappointment to their entire ancestral lineage and nation. In this video, we're not going to NPCs as an actual video game phenomena.
Man, I try to reach out to him on Twitter. He doesn't want me on his podcast. He ignored me. And, I mean, it's fine. I'm sure he gets a lot of stuff, but yeah, I'd love to go on it eventually.
But rather why the NPC meme strikes such a chord with people and why it's so symbolically important. The reason I made this video is that the NPC meme had a deeper resonance than I expected. I've explained NPCs to baby boomers and older folks, and they almost always start using it in their daily conversation.
I
Once
love that.
someone sees the NPC theory, they suddenly start seeing it all around them in the outside world. This is an idea Goethe invented named physiognomy, which has a couple different ways it manifests, but which means that by studying the outward forms of
Physiognomy.
something, either how it looks or the art it makes, you can determine what its inner soul is. Spengler and Jung have pushed this idea even further with the arguments that you can determine a society's soul and philosophy by looking at its art or by looking at its mythical story structures and dreams. We can unpack the underlying logic of human psychology. Something like NPCs are objectively silly, but it also speaks to something deeper in human society. Most young people in the modern world feel invisible. If you're most young people, you go to work at a soulless corporation, come home,
Could be
scroll through
me.
Instagram, watch Corn, and restart. I think people resonate with the
Don't watch
NPC
porn,
meme
people.
since they feel like NPCs. They look at their lives and wonder, if I were to be an NPC, how would my life be any different from what it is now? There's a certain degree of hollowness and artificiality to modern life. People feel like they could be living in a video game. On an anthropological basis, anonymity has its
Talk to me.
advantages. To use
Yeah.
the video game metaphor, the
Anthropological
main
basis.
character, who's
Love
off
that
fighting
shit, dude.
monsters, is much, much more likely to die than the NPC who stays in the town selling beer. The thing is that tradition and culture, or how a society functions, is an evolutionary adaptation that's been tested for thousands or millions of years to work. In most cases, that collective wisdom is smarter than an individual. Breaking against tradition and convention only works if you're intelligent and hardworking enough to make something better than the society's shared brain. This means that for most people, listening to their social superiors and social convention is the smartest strategy for them. In fact,
My only social inferior or superior is the good Lord Jesus Christ, and superior. Other than that, it's all social construction. It's all nonsense.
the vast majority of the population, or around 3/4, are low in trait openness, which means they actively do not like thinking about abstract ideas, and it's difficult and makes them uncomfortable. For most people who grew up in small towns, a normal experience is bringing up some crazy imaginative idea in school and having people shrug at you and tell you you're weird. This is understandable from an evolutionary perspective, since only a very small minority of the population is creative enough to think about abstracts in a useful way. Most people who try to be artists, intellectuals, and more are just bad at it.
Right here, bro. I'm trying to be an intellectual. I'm bad at it. I'm smoking weed. I'm having a great time though, and I got Craig. No matter what, I got Craig. If I lose Craig, I'm gonna be a little bit upset. No pressure, Craig. But yeah, you're a fixture of the show, man, and I appreciate all your support. Seriously.
There is this whole subculture of people who are trying to be original, but through that, they are part of the generic group of people who are trying to be original. Lots of people want to be special, but through wanting to be special, they become basic. Find a punk rocker who dresses like a 17th century nobleman and sings about coltan mining in the Congo, and I'll say he's original. Maybe not good, but still original. In fact, societies need to mostly be NPCs for their own survival. For an example of a country with too many main characters, look at Ireland. Ireland was an anarchic warrior society in which every individual believed himself worthy of being king. In other words, a society where everyone acted like a
Hell
main
yeah, brother.
character in a role playing video game. The result of this was the Irish were incapable of unifying and were conquered by the English, who killed off their ruling class and kept the Irish as second class citizens in their own country, incapable of owning property, voting, or obtaining an education.
And now look at us. We're in New England, and the Irish Americans. We're in New England. I live in New England. The Irish Americans they're more than the English.
Ireland has been consistently, until very recently, the poorest and least advanced country in Western Europe. Boring monotony is the normal state of the human condition. Most people for all of history have lived tedious and boring lives as peasants. If you were to go back to 1500, explain the idea of NPCs to a nobleman, he would completely understand and would say, "Oh, you mean the common people."
The
In this
common
manner, the
people.
NPC
Oh
culture
God,
carries an
dude.
elitist and classist undercurrent to it, that there is a small group of people who imagine themselves to be in a separate range of existence from the majority population.
I feel like that
Think of
was
your
like how
average
it was
historic
for
peasant,
most
whether
of
in
world
medieval
history.
Europe, ancient China,
Oh, there's
Aztec
actually people watching
Mexico,
on
or
Twitter. What's
modern
up,
India,
whoever you
living
are?
the same
That's
kind of life
I
as their
usually there's
fathers
not.
and
But hello.
grandfathers, staying in the same village and other very boring, seemingly programmed things. For reasons we'll explain through this video, the people at the time didn't view the lower classes as NPCs, rather more like animals or children, since their worldview is not as mechanistic and artificial as ours is
Whoa.
today. For a 17th century farmer, the world seemed very real to you, since the key distinction that allows the idea of a modern NPC to be independent from the peasants of previous societies is the artificiality of the modern world, something I think a lot of people pick up on an intuitive basis. Those peasants didn't feel like they were video game characters since they were deeply grounded into their place in time. If you were a pre modern peasant, although your life was boring, you belonged to a tight knit, shared village.
Damn, bro. That just really hits. Like that's like it's like we're not even human anymore. I don't feel like it as much.
Society with people you knew for your whole life. You probably had a very close family, children, friend group, a religion that explained the world to you, and an environment you lived in which felt real since you didn't know anything else. I'm not trying to glorify what was in most cases an incredibly hard life, but there
Yeah, like objectively it was way harder, but like, when we see the problems that we have in our society today, like all the like how upset people are, I mean, there's something to that, right? There's something to just um, having quality of life over like length. Like, yes, stuff was probably worse, but I think what happens in our society was our lives are so good that like it just shifts the way we feel about everything, so we expect everything to be so much better. So to us, when something bad happens, it can be such a bad thing because objectively our lives are very easy, most of us. It's not true for everybody, but you know yeah, I just, it's probably rose colored glasses, but I feel for that time. I feel for wanting that.
are reasons that it lasted for thousands of years, and our society is falling apart at the seams only decades after it was founded. For a 17th century farmer, the world seemed very real to you since you had lots of relationships that you could place yourself in. Instead of feeling anonymous, your life probably felt too public and too personal. People would remember the
Yeah,
dumb
that too.
mistake you made
Damn.
as a teenager for your whole life. Your lord who determined all your governance either liked you or hated you. And your kids, friends, and parents probably saw you have sex. The culture you lived in was the
I'll keep
collective
it. I'll keep
experience of
today.
people like you or your village, and was thus intensely personal, but also had useful advice for the situations you'd face on a daily basis. We like to discount variables like religion, family, community, and so forth in the modern world, while the pre modern viewed them as very important. However, we've consistently found with studies that they are the thing that makes people the happiest, much more so than money. Thus, when you look at their collapse, we can't view it as a secondary problem, rather, the number one issue for society. We treat the breakdown of community and family as a bad side effect of having a better economy, well, the reality is you're actively dismantling your entire society's ability to function.
Damn, bro.
However, for people today, they feel like they're not living in a world that exists for them. Industrial civilization is based fundamentally off treating human culture as a commodity and constantly changing with no stability, while also valuing the physical world over the emotional and social.
Yeah, we'll come back to this later. This is rough. Yeah, I'll stream a little bit more later. I'm sick and I'm tired and this is very depressing. So I'm gonna hop off this before finishing this video. All right. Good night.